we've hit that since mid-February. We needed 39.34 to get there, and it looks like we just did. With most sectors higher, technology in the lead. That explains the Nasdaq's 2.5% gain today. It's been a strong week for the Nasdaq, bouncing back as well from last week, up 3.7% so far for the week. Small caps also joined the party. They were up 2.3%.
Okay, good afternoon. We're going in just a second. So there's almost, when you look outside and you see the weather today, you almost ask yourself, is there a way to do this outside? I know from a sound standpoint, I don't know if we can, but when you have days like this, you just want to be outdoors as much as you can. Oh, I'm sorry. I still have the volume on. CNBC. And if you are watching the market, what a day. Now, usually when you have a stimulus package pass and you're going to pour this much money into the economy, most stocks are going to do well, but everything is doing well. So the last, I would say, week or so, we've watched the Dow do well or the S&P do well and not necessarily NASDAQ. NASDAQ's more your tech stocks. Today's a great day for NASDAQ. If to those following me on my Amazon had a really, actually a very good week so far. So this is why those that are new to trading stocks that stick to good stocks. Those you can catch companies bouncing back. You take gains, which is nowhere near a $300. What is it? What is GameStop right now? Let me look this up. GameStop is trading at $260. It's not a $260 stock. It hit Wednesday $348. That's just ridiculous. It's just no words to describe how ridiculous that is. That's not stock trading. That's not investing. That's just, playing blackjack and putting numbers on the roulette wheels. And you'll hit it. There is a smart way to play this. So it was down around $40, and I actually thought to myself, what if I put a buy-in for 50? And the thought process was that if it went from 40 to 50, then it's going to go, crazy anyway. So you might as well get that jump. I didn't do it because it's a terrible move to do. It's not a smart stock to be in. But had I done it, suppose I had said buy 500 shares at $50, that's would have done quite well. So, maybe I'm just mad that I'm not in it, but it's absurd that stock. And if you know the history of the GameStop, that was the one that Reddit took over and some people forced the shorts out of. Hello to all the people saying hi. Hello, Kim. How are you? Mary, as always, Dorothy, Elizabeth, and all the other texts that are coming in. Good afternoon. I hope I hope you got outside today. I hope you get outside after this and enjoy this spectacular weather. To those that we've got the last week, a lot of new donors, and to those that are wondering, I'm trying to build a podcast, and I want it to be statewide and hopefully national at some point. That's the goal. That's my pie in the sky goal. There's no profit here. We have web costs. I've kind of eaten those. I make money on a day-to-day basis from advertising, from marketing, consulting, and advertising, and so a lot of which has nothing to do with this. This is what I'm passionate about. I'm trying to make it grow, but your donations do help, and I appreciate the influx of donations we've gotten in the last week. But I'm in a good mood because the last week we've seen Amazon bounce back, not bounce back to where I'm even. I'm still sitting on some losses, but I do like to tell you the winning trades we have when I'm buying or selling, or the losing trades, and that's one of the losing trades so far. I don't believe for a second, 2 months from now, that'll be a losing trade. And that's why you stick, if you're just getting started, especially to good companies, because if the company is fundamentally sound, a downturn usually becomes a better turn down the road. So that's a good thing. That being said, what did I put here? Last night, we did see the Board of Ed. If you're in Brantford, we talked about the Board of Ed had their meeting. It's interesting, watching the meeting. We spend so much time in meetings on nonsense before getting to the meat. Like, for some reason in the agenda, parents had a petition that went to the town clerk to be verified, then to the Board of Ed to have a special meeting to discuss school reopening, what have you. And they put that item on the agenda before the superintendent's presentation, which is just stupid. Like you expect educators to be a little smarter than this. If you are there to talk about reopening, make a little more sense. Listen, let's put the presentation first, and maybe there's no need for that petition. And then, that up and Hamlet Hernandez, instead of saying, hey, let's have a presentation, let's put this off till after hear the presentation, says we need to pull a lawyer to try if we can legally do this, because it wasn't signatures, as according to law, it was online petition and people put their name in there. Give me a break. It's just this legal rhetoric nonsense that is not necessary. That said, most parents heard at least a little bit closer to what they wanted to hear. Now, school reopened much sooner than we thought. We can pull this up on Brantford 7. I did post this on the reopening plan. Now, my feeling, seeing this, was that it wasn't a yes, bona fide, this is opening, this is all happening. It was kind of a, here's our plan, and we'll let you know for sure kind of thing. So I think that's where it's left. I think word is spreading so quickly that this is going to have to be the plan, barring some massive increase in the positive cases. But the number is 322 full in-persons for the elementary school. And in fairness, that's where most of the complaints came from, where kids were unable to concentrate, unable to focus on sitting still for hours a day in front of the computer. Another week, 329 will be full in person for Walsh. And then 4-5, April 5th, will be full in person for Brantford High. I did not hear a logical explanation as to why this has to be tiered. And I did not see a lot of other schools tiering it like this. The high schoolers will be, and many of the high schoolers, if it's a busing issue or what have you, that's less of an issue because many have cars, but they're going to go to school full time for a week and then have recess, which, at some point, beggars can't be choosers. You have a plan. Many of the younger kids will be back in school for 3 weeks before vacation, or at least 2 weeks before vacation, and it's a move in the right direction. I do have to give, this is to not just the parents that did this, but also Hamlet. This is the way the process is supposed to work. It could have been easier. Hamlet could have made this 10 times easier. There are times he makes it difficult, and I would argue it appears deliberately so. That said, they're back in school. They got something. Could this have happened 3 weeks ago? Yeah. Should it have happened 3 weeks ago or a month ago? A bona fide plan presented? Absolutely. And so, that's something for the board to figure out down the road. Is this a recurring theme? Is this a problem with Hamlet, with the administration? Are they happy with the overall pace that Brantford schools are going in? That said, it looks like in the next few weeks, we will catch up in Brantford with the towns around us. And, it goes back to the same thing we've talked about many, many times. For some strange reason, Brantford always has to be last. We have to be last to reopen. And I said this before, this goes to little stupid stuff. Like, we know it's going to be a snow day, but we have to be the last to stay. And good management in many ways, whether it's a company, a corporation, a nonprofit, being proactive as a manager helps eliminate so many of the questions, so many of the uncertainty that many parents have, and the anxiety that parents have, especially during this time. You couldn't be completely certain on everything when this first happened. We didn't know. There were so many question marks. They were attacking Hamlet, and in fairness, I defended him then, and primarily in the administration, because they didn't know either. Parents wanted graduation. They wanted we didn't know. But now we do. And the more certainty we can add from a government standpoint, whether it's the Fed at the national level when it comes to interest rates, or the government when it comes to stimulus packages, or the Board of Education when it comes to scheduling and plans, the more we can help constituents, help parents, help families. And so we seem to do the opposite when it comes to our education in Brantford. There seems to be far more certainty, even in the way press releases are written. Paul Freeman in Guilford, we're going back to school X. That's it. Other schools, we're going back to school this day. We didn't have to send out a survey. They already had the information they needed. They just did it. Here in Brantford, it seems like everything has to be this long, drawn out process, and then we have to be the last ones to announce it. So it's good that we have something. But there is a point that this Board of Ed, if I was on the Board of Ed, and I would encourage them to go back and look at this process. Is this the process that we want to be known for? There were some parents that were proud of the fact that other news organization, that's fine. They got, I don't know if the Register was there or WTN, whatever it was. But the fact that news organizations had to be there, that the fact that this was even a story, they didn't go to Guilford. They didn't have to go to Milford. They didn't have to go there and cover a Board of Ed meeting with angry parents. The fact that we had to be, it's a little embarrassing. And that goes to the leadership. And so the Board of Ed has to make a decision. Is this the direction they want to go in moving forward? Were there benefits to doing things this way? I don't know the answer to that. Some of the comments here, Steve, I'm in Florida today and schools are all open. Sports, including wrestling, are being played. Something is not right in Connecticut. Okay. Replying to Steve, same in Alaska. How does Brantford school system rate statewide? We're pretty much in the middle. We're not a bad school system. But here's the deal about school systems. And this comes back to the union negotiations, those contracts. Teachers are either loved or hated in many ways. We always say we love teachers, and then we get to certain areas and we're like, oh my God, teachers are demanding and unions are demanding what have you. Teachers can only mold the clay that they're given. If you take teachers from Brantford and put them in East Haven and take teachers from East Haven and put them in Brantford, the results will likely be the same. If you take Madison teachers and put them in New Haven and New Haven teachers and put them in Madison, the results in those towns will likely be the same. Madison teachers are not better than New Haven teachers. So when we start rating schools, it's not really indicative of the performance of a teacher or of even a superintendent at times. The superintendent I look at as an organizational structure. Do we have a management that people have confidence in? Do they the test results are fine, and we always go over those. But again, let's put this in perspective. If you're a teacher in New Haven, and in your classroom are students that are coming from homes that are maybe terrible, domestic violence homes, they haven't eaten in a day or two, they deal with, can't sleep at night for safety reasons, there's no heat in a home, some are homeless, some are living in motels. As you get to Brantford, there's less of that, but there's some of that. As you get to Guilford, there's much less of that, maybe some. Madison, you're not going to get that. The teacher has a different job to do in that classroom. And so the results you're going to get from that classroom are going to vary significantly from town to town because those teachers have to deal with completely different ballgame and completely different clay to mold. The other aspect of that is typically the students that have the most issues, whether it's they're coming from homes that are broken up or what have you, or learning issues, take up 80% of the time of the teacher. And we know this even from when we were in school years ago, that one or two students that may have been a problem, the teacher was spending all their time there. That hinders the rest of the class. And so you're more likely to have those students that have issues at home or private issues in inner cities or lower income. I'm not saying low income, but lower income than, say, Madison or Fairfield County or New Canaan, for example. And so it's sometimes a dishonest comparison to say, where is Brantford in the state? Because we have good teachers. We just do. We can't always compare us to the way Greenwich is doing where, even in Brantford. So let's break down Brantford for a second. Talk to a PTA parent at the Tisco school or talk to a PTA parent at Mary T. Murphy. And the Mary T. Murphy parents always will tell me the same thing. They want to raise money at Tisco. Somebody writes a check for 10 grand. Mary Murphy, they're collecting $5 at a time. You want to do an extra program, something extracurricular. You want to do something with the students. Half the Tisco parents do it no problem. Mary T. Murphy or Sliney, not the case. You want to have a student has a learning issue or can't catch on to something. Tisco just hires a tutor. Mary T. Murphy, maybe not. So even within Brantford, we have significantly different economic brackets. Our schools are in different economic areas. And we can see that in performance and in the teachers. Are the teachers at Tisco better than Murphy? No. They're dealing with different clay. and they can only mold that clay. So I always respond that way to that question, how does Branford rank? Because it's an unfair question. And even through Board of Ed meetings, we sit through Board of Ed meetings sometimes, and they're going through test scores, and people in the audience are saying, how come our math is low? And how your math is low isn't because of the teacher. It almost always isn't because of the curriculum. A little bit, it can impact it. It's because of the issues those teachers deal with. And how do you, I love this because it then goes into this conversation of the school teacher contracts. And every time we have a teacher contract come up, politically it becomes, our teachers work hard and they do a good job. And yes, that's true, but they're not merit contracts. We're not going through and saying how many good teachers do we have, how many bad teachers do we have. Everybody gets the same raise. So we treat them as a group, and then we group which schools are doing better, which town is doing better. It's often unfair. I'd almost like to see a more merit-based system where, somebody says, how does this teacher grade or rate out or what have you, and their raise is based on that. But with a union, you can't do that. And so I question, yes, Branford sits right about in the middle of the state when it comes to towns, but we're about in the middle of the state when it comes to economics too. And teachers, again, mold the clay that they're given. Jennifer, welcome. Well done, Jennifer. Jennifer is one of the parents who organized the effort to get school reopened. I think she did a spectacular job, and you certainly got some results. And so from now on, when anybody comes to me and says we want to start some activism in town and we want to get something done, I'm sending everybody to Jennifer, and she can guide them. And now she's just freaking out. So no, I'm not doing that, Jen. You're fine, but nice job. That said, we have a stimulus package. And so, we have a bunch. I have 15 different places people send messages during the podcast. But the stimulus package was passed today, which means if you get direct deposit with your tax returns, you will have, a week or two, $1,400. If you get a check or don't get returns, you'll get that $1,400 in the mail. To put this in perspective, here are some of the things. If you are lower income, and I'm not saying no income, but if you're lower income in a family with kids, you have a very, very generous package. $1,400. So let's take a family of four, for example, with an income of $140,000 household income. Branford's median income is around $80,000. Let's suppose your household income is around $140,000. Maybe there's two people working. You're going to get family of four, $1,400 a person. That's $5,600. That's just a check. Okay. The second thing you do, if anybody's on unemployment, you'll get your unemployment funded and an extra $300 through the first week of September. The third thing will be if you got unemployment last year, the first $10,000 of that unemployment will be tax-free. So if you got taxes taken out, you'll adjust for that in your taxes. And the fourth aspect is the child tax credit, which I believe is typically $2,000 a child. That's increased to $3,600 a child. And it will be paid to you. Instead of being a tax credit, it will be paid to you. That's from what I read it. Now, that might more clarification may come out of that, but you will get a monthly check for that. So this is not just a coronavirus stimulus package. This is a Democratic agenda stimulus package. This was a goal that was a very simple goal, was to get more money to the lower classes. And I tend to agree with the overall goal. What I don't agree with is those goals being part of a stimulus package, because they're being sold that way, right? If you look at Chris Murphy or any of the senators' pages or any of the leaders' pages, people are struggling. We need this because of the coronavirus. We need this. This is not really a coronavirus package. This is a Democratic agenda package, much of which I agree. I agree with more aid going to the lower classes. This should have been a separate bill. And the real impact we're going to see, and we're already seeing this. So there's an article today on CNBC, and the headline is Biden wants bipartisan support for infrastructure, but GOP and Dems are already drawing battle lines. So one of the things that a president has with his bully pulpit is a certain amount of political capital when he gets in office. And generally early in a term is when you're most likely to have bipartisanship. Biden talked about bipartisanship. We wanted to get people together. But that kind of went out the window with this package. Now, make this clear. a stimulus package could have been bipartisan. There were certainly Republicans that wanted and supported a stimulus package. What they didn't support was this size stimulus package. What they didn't support was a package becoming the Democratic agenda stimulus package. We're not making judgment calls on right or wrong here. We're just looking at political realities. And so the decision to say, you know what, we're not going bipartisan. We're just going to pass. They could have easily have passed $900 billion like they did a few months ago, paid out the $1,400, increased unemployment benefits, helped a bunch of different areas for money, PPP money, that sort of thing, and not included the money for towns and for states, some of which are doing fine. Not included some other aspects, the child tax credit, for example, which really doesn't have anything to do with the coronavirus. And they could have passed that. And it could have been overwhelmingly bipartisan. They chose not to. That was a political decision made by Biden and made by the Democrats. And when you start using up that political capital, the next time you turn around and say, well, we want to be bipartisan on infrastructure, no one's really going to trust that. And so you're in this situation now where that goodwill you may have built up by winning the election, the best chance you had to be bipartisan, you kind of threw out the window. And so now infrastructure, which should have passed in the first year under Trump, should have been involved 4 years ago, should overwhelmingly be bipartisan. Likely won't be, because Republicans are going to dig in and Democrats, as they typically do. By the way, Republicans do this too, but Democrats a little more so are just going to pack this thing with projects that they want to see in their district or what have you. Now, I want our representatives to do that. I want Rosa DeLauro to do that. I want Chris Murphy and Blumenthal to do that because I want money for Exit 53. If you remember, a few years back, Jamie Cosgrove created a plan that would change the exit ramp at Exit 53 and create something where you can switch the roads and you create a four-way interchange. I believe that's about a $40 to $50 million project. And I think our delegation, if there's an infrastructure plan, should fight like hell to get that. So, yes, selfishly, I want that to happen. But you do have, as a party, a certain amount of political capital. They had to use some budget bills, reconciliation bill to pass this. And so they also used reconciliation to pass Obamacare, if we remember correctly. So they are pushing this through. It's kind of hard to now say we want bipartisanship. Bob Grandy, Republicans were already dug in. I don't know if I agree with that. I think Romney's article in the Wall Street Journal was accurate. There was certainly money in this bill that there was certainly money in this bill that didn't need to be in this bill. And if they're selling it as a coronavirus relief bill, there's a lot in this bill that is not directly tied to the coronavirus. Now, Romney had some ideas for a child tax credit as well. In some cases, I think more generous. That could have been a separate bill. They could have separated that out, passed a coronavirus bill in the $900 billion range like they did a few months back, and then worked on a separate bill, and then passed that on their own. They didn't do that. So they put this all together, and now they're saying and when we talked about the other day, and I don't know if everybody watches every podcast, this concept of false equivalence. We have this issue with the coronavirus, therefore we have to pass a child tax credit. Nah, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. We have an issue with coronavirus, but therefore we have to give money to California, which had a surplus last year. Not so much. So we're pushing this as people desperately need it to stay alive, to keep their businesses open. There's a lot of money in here that is not equivalent to that demand. But on Exit 53, Michael, I posted a proposal a couple years ago, even including a diagram. Well, there is a drawing done. I think BL did it. It wasn't, the town was part of it, obviously, but the Council of Governments actually summoned that and started that process. And it's done. It's just a matter of money. And there has to be funding for it. Is it a shovel-ready project? I don't know if we're shovel-ready. This has to go through the state. The state has to approve it. There's a lot of things that have to happen, but it's much closer than many other projects, and I'd like to see that. So it is what it is. On to how will this bill affect us, Connecticut, going forward? The Hartford Courant did a detailed list of money in the stimulus per state Going forward, we talked about how it will affect individual people. Are we talking about stimulus or infrastructure? Infrastructure, we have nothing yet. Infrastructure has been this thing of we can pass it, we can pass it, we can pass it, we can pass it for the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and it just hasn't happened. For whatever political reason, it hasn't happened. It should have been Trump's priority. Before the wall, before all that crap, the first thing Trump should have done is pass an infrastructure bill. That was a mistake from him. The same way Obama made a mistake on focusing. He should have focused on the economy early in his presidential terms. He focused on healthcare, and that hurt a lot of his political capital going forward. So an infrastructure bill is incredibly over. Listen, if you're a political conservative, a fiscal conservative, you want an infrastructure bill. Taking care of our bridges, taking care of our roads, improving traffic, improving the trains, improving rail, improving all of those things are part of being smart fiscally. It saves money down the road. It helps economically. There should be overwhelming bipartisan support for a good infrastructure bill. When it's coming on the heels of a bill where Democrats said, I don't care, we're just going to pass this alone, that's going to be tougher to do politically. And so remember something, they're not all returning to Connecticut. Some of these congressmen are returning to Alabama and to Texas and to Oklahoma and to southern states that are heavily Republican and have to answer to them. And so it's going to be interesting. Do I want to see an infrastructure bill? I wanted to see it for years. For years. Am I selfish about this? Yes, I want Exit 53 done. Exit 53 getting done will drastically change that exit for the much, much better. By the way, if you haven't noticed this, if you're in Branford now, that area is really picking up. I think Saks purchased some property. A church is going there. CrossFit is back there. Q and Brew is back there. Some really nice improvements. Some businesses going back there. But to fix having Commercial Parkway in a separate exit ramp coming into the same pretzel area doesn't make sense. There's far, far better ways to design that. And a four-way exit. The reason you don't have Costco right there is the lack of a four-way exit. It would be perfect for it. Perfect location for it. But instead of having a four-way exit, all the traffic that comes to any retail there now has to come back out to Route 1, drive up Route 1, get on exit 54 into the Cedar Street exchange, and that's probably the worst exchange in Branford. Cedar Street's a nightmare. There's a lot of accidents, and really some horrific accidents in that exchange. So adding traffic from exit 53 to the exit 54 interchange is disastrous. You'll never get any significant development over there until you have a four-way exit ramp. In fact, if you go back to Jamie Cosgrove's first election versus Campbell put out a press release saying he supported Costco at exit 53, and it made zero sense. There was no way. Remember, Costco pulls from a wide area. A lot of people going to Costco come off the highway. If you're going to Milford Costco, if you're going to Old East Lyme Costco, you're getting off the highway. Those people would have to get off exit 54, Cedar Street, on Route 1, much of which is one lane, and then when they were leaving, do this exact same thing again because there's no ramp there. So that can drastically change the economics of town and that exit. It can also drastically reduce traffic at exit 54, where anybody coming from points Guilford, Madison, Old Saybrook have to get off 54 to get to exit 53. And so, for example, if you were going to Kohl's and you wanted to come from Guilford, I don't know, is there a Kohl's in Guilford? I don't know if there's a Kohl's in those towns as well, but if there's no Kohl's in those towns and you're coming from there, you're getting off 54, coming off that four-way, coming down Route 1, which is not good. We're adding traffic to that. So an infrastructure bill makes sense, but the Democrats gave up some political capital moving forward by what they did with this bill. You could agree with it or disagree with it. We're not taking a stance, but that's reality, and that's how politics works. Exit 53 should have been improved 20 years ago. Exit 53 should never have been a three-way. It's a terrible design. It should be a four-way exit. And it is what it is. When Jamie took office, he initiated a plan to redesign it. There are plans to do that. There are budgets to do that. That has no question changed in the last 3 or 4 years since that plan was done. But there is a plan, and hopefully, if an infrastructure bill is something that is prioritized by Biden, our delegation can push to get money for that exit ramp. There's no guarantee of that, but that's what we're hoping for. So there are repercussions for things. You pass the stimulus bill, It'll do an economic boost. We saw it in the stock market today. Also, it can cause inflation. It can cause the cost of things to go up. When a lot of people have money to spend on a finite number of things like cruise ships rooms or whatever it is, those prices go up. That's inflation. So there are negative impacts to some of these things. Politically, passing this thing with no bipartisan support can have negative impacts on future bills that may come forward. Republicans are going to be less likely to want to work with them. And remember something, it's 50-50 in the Senate. So you have the tiebreaker, but the tiebreaker means Senator Sinema and Senator Mnuchin. Is it Mnuchin? No, that's Steve Mnuchin. Manchin have to agree. And those are two very, 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 very moderate Democrats in fairly Republican districts. So Democrats have some work to do, especially if they want to be bipartisan and after some of what they gave up with this bill. So that being said, congratulations to the parents of Branford that fought to get their kids back in school. In that survey, not every parent wants their child back in school. We understand that. We want to respect that. You can keep your kid home if you want to. We understand. And so for the most part, overwhelmingly, the kids' parents wanted their kids back in school. Well done by parents. Done by administration some credit for and making that hopefully. That being said, I hope you get inside. I'm going to. I did an Orange Theory this morning, destroyed. Accidentally, I used to go to 45-minute classes, accidentally signed up for an hour class, so I got crushed. But I'm going to try to get outside and get some walking. It's an amazing day. Guys, thanks for joining me as always, and I hope you all have a great night.